This is the way I want you to drink it. Mm. Mm, 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 Hello there.
Hello, welcome to Splash TV Movie Reviews, the only reviews that are so trustworthy you'd let us raw dog you because you know that we'd pull out in time and also not give you any diseases. Today's movie we'll be reviewing is Doctor Strange, starring Benedict Cumberbatch as Dr. Stephen Strange, a fucking spot-on casting call. He absolutely nailed the character. Now, as I've said before, superhero movies are among my favorites, and the last superhero movie I saw was Suicide Squad, which I thought was pretty shitty. It left a very foul taste of ass in my mouth, but after finishing Doctor Strange, it has not only cleansed my palate, where I once tasted rectum, now all I taste is the sweet, savory sensation of boeuf bourguignon. It was a fucking great movie. Now, ordinarily in my movie reviews, I spoil a lot of the movie's plot, and this will be no exception. So the movie starts by showing Doctor Strange in the operating room, letting you know how good he is at what he does. He's basically doggy-styling nurses while he's performing open-heart surgeries. Usually some humans require machine assistance when they make some precise cuts and shit, but he can just toss the scalpel in his mouth and do it as a joke. He's just this incredibly skilled surgeon. But then he gets into a car accident because he was texting and driving pretty much, and he loses the ability to do surgeries because his hands get all fucked up. And then he spirals into a very dark place and just keeps trying to find ways to fix his hands. He eventually comes in contact with someone known as the Ancient One, who begins to teach them some mystical magic stuff. And this is where my first complaint about the movie comes into play. I love the magic stuff. I love all that mystical stuff and the trippy vibe that it has, because it sends you on like an LSD-induced acid trip for a little while, and it's really fucking cool. I like that a lot. I just don't think they use the mystical powers very well. For instance, they're able to draw weapons into existence, but they choose to bring forth the most useless weapons, like very small whips and chains. They bring shoelaces and start slapping each other with them, and a very small shield. Why wouldn't you give a bigger shield, like a whole fucking building for a shield, and bring like a giant axe, like a 900-foot axe or something? That's like if I had the ability to conjure weapons on the spot and I'm choosing to bring ukuleles and recorders into the world and try and beat people to death with them. It makes no sense. Why wouldn't you give yourself a more useful weapon instead of these very small reach shit piles of ass? And another thing, a very reoccurring power, is their ability to change the terrain and make buildings shift and fall onto each other, shift the world and all that. That's a very powerful thing, but they only use it to trip each other. That's genuinely the only time it's used. Why wouldn't you use that power to try and crush them between buildings or make shit fall onto them or make them fall onto shit? Why would you reserve that ability for, oh, I'm gonna throw you off balance, get ready, here comes a real zinger, it flies real fast in the Thunderdome, gotcha, yep, you fell, I win. It's just dumb, you know, that you have this really powerful thing and you use it for such a dumb purpose. But overall, I love the way the magic was used. For the most part, I just feel they could have done more with it. The main villain wasn't bad. He was a simple character, which is good. You know, he had a very clear goal that he strives for. I want to take Earth and put it in the dark dimension with Dormammu, and he can do whatever he wants with it. He can make it his third testicle. Just get us to the dark dimension so we exist beyond time, so we all live forever. A decent idea. Really not bad. Dormammu was a pretty cool villain. He had a face that looked like some very long purple pubic hairs. It was kind of cool looking. I enjoyed that. The villain I didn't like is the last one they revealed, Baron Mordo. I thought his was very shitty. He became a villain because he felt betrayed because the Ancient One tapped into power from the Dark Dimension, and he didn't like how Doctor Strange could manipulate time. He thought it broke the natural laws, so then he becomes a supervillain. It's pretty shitty. He's just like this strict fucking 5th grade hall monitor who takes the rules too seriously, where the rules are unbreakable no matter what. Even though Doctor Strange saves Earth and time itself and everything, he still hates him for breaking the natural law of things. So I thought that was kind of a dumb reason. I know that wasn't his reason for being evil in the comic books, so I feel like they could have done something cooler here. I thought Baron Mordo as a character in the movie was awesome though. I just didn't like his reason for being a bad guy. Now, overall, I have so few complaints about this movie. I thought it was fucking great. The story was fun. The visuals were absolutely stunning. Ben My Dick Cucumber Snatch did great as Doctor Strange. I fucking loved the ending. the fight with Dormammu, I thought that was beautifully done. It's my favorite ending to any Marvel movie, or pretty much any superhero movie in general. I thought it was just fucking great, and really just overall it was a fun movie to watch. So, as per tradition at Splash TV Movie Reviews, I'll give this one a moisture rating. I'm giving this one easily an amlactin out of absolute moisture. Amlactin doesn't just moisturize dry skin, it fucking makes dryness go extinct. It regrows your skin. It's so goddamn moist. Now, that's exactly what this movie did for me. The last two superhero movies, Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad, left me so dry, but this movie heavy-duty moisturized me. Big time. I left the theater dripping wet. It was fucking great. Easily an amlactin out of absolute moisture. So, yeah, that's all. And remember, Splash TV's making you wet. It's your moisture. Use it when you need it. Call JG Wetsworth, 877-SPLASH now. Moist meter. Have it your way. As long as that way is wet. Spider-Man Homecoming. I just saw that shit. What did I think of that shit? How moist was that shit? I'll tell you in a minute. So you have to wait to find out that shit. This is the third new Spider-Man universe to come out in theaters. I'm happy to say it's a lot better than their last sorry attempt with the Amazing Spider-Man. That you're doing some cool ass shit. And there is no ass shit in here that is cool. It's just very boring fights that kind of just devolve into Spider-Man throws two punches and then glues someone to something with his webs. That's about the extent of it. And then when he sees Vulture, he throws a web and just kind of wrestles with him like it's a fucking remote control car out of control. It was just very underwhelming. So let's go ahead and pop this bitch into the moist meeting toaster, and we're clocking this at 75% moisture. I definitely think it's worth watching. It is a very solid superhero movie, and I think everything about it is very well done, except the very underwhelming action. There's not a whole lot of action here, and the action that is here is not very fun to watch. But I do think it is a very good movie, and definitely worth seeing for fans of superhero movies. That's it. See ya. Hi, and welcome to the latest installment in the Sodden Cinematic Universe. Today I'll be analyzing the moisture content in the new Thor movie, called Thor Ragnarok. Full disclosure, I think the previous two Thor movies were stinky ass. I think they are by far the weakest in the MCU, but I still went into this movie with high expectations and wasn't let down. The movie trailers try to sell you that this is a different approach to a standard superhero action flick, and for the most part, they're right. This is a pretty different approach. It's a more comedic approach, a different visual style for the most part as well. And it is pretty different from most of the others. Until it gets to the end, then it kind of falls into cliches and what you'd expect, but it does it well enough where that's not a big complaint. This movie's about 80% great, 10% what we've seen a million times, and 100% reason to remember the name. It is a really fun movie to watch, especially when it comes to comedy. There was a lot of comic bits throughout this entire movie, and they did it surprisingly well. I've talked about this before, but I'm not one to laugh out loud during comedy movies or anything like that. Occasionally I'll blow a little light load out of my nose during a scene or something, but for the most part, I find modern comedy movies to be about as enjoyable as watching your beloved cat get run over by a fucking steamroller. However, this movie actually surprised me with how decently the comedy was executed here. I'm not saying I was laughing out loud, having a hoot and a holler the whole time, rolling down the aisle, pissing my trousers, laughing or anything like that. But it actually got me giggling quite a bit. There was one character they introduced here who's perhaps one of my favorite in the entire MCU, called Korg. I thought Korg was just so fucking great. He was a purely comic relief character who did comic relief really well. And the comedy wasn't the only surprisingly good element here. The visuals were a bit different to what you're accustomed to seeing in modern superhero movies, and really modern movies in general, since everything has this trend of trying to be super dark and gritty and shit. This movie was very colorful, and it had a different style than most other MCU movies, especially one that stood out to me is during a flashback where Valkyries had a showdown with the main antagonist. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The whole movie just looked really great and very different from most of the other ones, in my personal opinion. Now, the story isn't super strong, but it's not weak either. It's just predictable, and that's not a big complaint or anything. It's a fucking superhero movie. You can't expect it to reinvent the condom with some type of groundbreaking story. It's a very decent story, and it's told very well, and it's the first standalone MCU movie that I feel will have an actual impact on the MCU universe as a whole. Whereas other MCU standalone films like Iron Man 3 don't feel like they have any weight at all. You know, they have the main hero just go off on this side adventure that doesn't feel important. You know, he goes to the local diner where a madman selling chicken wings that are too spicy. The astoundingly high Scoville poses a threat to taste buds all over the world, overloading these taste buds. The hero stops him. Yippee, it was a fun adventure while it lasted. But it doesn't have any weight in that universe. This movie has a whole lot of shit that happens that I feel will have a huge impact on that universe, and it's fucking great. Now, the villain, I think, is a good villain. She didn't have a whole lot of screen time here to really develop, in my opinion, but she was played very well by Cate Blanchett, and I thought she was super cool. But they kind of shoehorned in an undead zombie army, which was kind of fucking lame, in my opinion. But overall, I think she could be a cool villain if we see her again and she's more fleshed out. And I might as well at least touch on it. Soundtrack's good. I never really have a whole lot to say about soundtrack unless it really wows me or really disappoints me and makes me feel bad about myself for even hearing that music. This movie ran that middle ground where it was good. It was no complaints. It was fun to listen to. Let's go ahead and pop this shit into the moist meter here. I'm giving Thor Ragnarok an 85%. It was a genuinely fun movie to sit through. The entire audience loved it. All the comedy bits really hit pretty hard with the audience I was in, and it even got a little giggle out of me here and there. Korg had a one-liner that actually gave me a bit of a hoot, so that was a surprise since I don't typically laugh at movies like I said earlier. And the whole movie was just a fun ride to go on, and it felt like it had a real weight in the MCU. Easily the best Thor movie, while the previous two Thor movies just ate shithole. This movie pounded shithole with a lot of fun in there. That was meant as a compliment, but I realize saying shithole in a positive way doesn't exactly convey the idea of something being good. So just know, the last two movies ate shit. This movie was serving out shit, and it was good shit. I enjoyed it. That's it. See ya. Hi there, and welcome to the newest entry into the moist expanded universe. Today we're looking at the new Black Panther movie. I'm gonna go ahead and start with my biggest complaint about this, and it has nothing to do with the movie. The fucking troglodyte, Cro-Magnon, homunculus, cave-dwelling lunatic that sat next to me made this the most unpleasant experience I've ever had at a movie theater. She was so unbelievably loud at every single point in this movie for the first hour and a half. I swear to God, this might have been her first time seeing a movie. She'd only been explained the concept of movies but hadn't seen it in practice, and she dove into this one, and of course sat right next to me. Every single thing that happened on screen, she was making a loud comment. And I don't mean just like a loud whisper or like a normal talking voice. I'm talking literally shouting like a fucking soccer commentator every time they score a goal. If a character breathed on screen, you were going to get an earful of what she thought about that nice deep breath or a speech. If there was action, God forbid there was action, she was louder than any sound effect. It was so bad to the point where 3 seats down, there was these 2 dudes that kept looking at me because I was sitting right next to her, giving me one of these bro nods, one of these and then some of these, just enough to tell me, hey, get her to stop, as if I'm going to lean over and stick a binky in this bitch's mouth. She just would not stop being so disruptive to everyone in the theater, and of course she had her phone out because all children do. But luckily, just like all children with a sugar rush, she crashed. About an hour and a half in, she fell asleep. And that was my favorite part of the movie, when she slept. Definitely the best arc of the movie. But now let's get to the actual movie. It was fucking fantastic. I think this is probably Marvel's most visually breathtaking movie. The setting, the costume, the special effects, all of it top notch, and I genuinely do believe it's probably Marvel's best. Also, Marvel at the top of their game in terms of music here. The music in this, the score, really, really surprisingly good. Extremely good even. It was a very, very enjoyable eye candy movie with a lot of audio stimulus that's sure to get even the most stubborn of audio snobs erect. It was really good in both departments, but there were a few shortcomings here. The biggest one being comedy. Most Marvel movies these days have a lot of comedy in them. This one doesn't, and that's not a complaint. I actually like that it went for a more serious approach, but it did try and sprinkle some half-assed attempt at comedy in here, and it didn't land. Nobody in the theater laughed at any of them, and in fact, they even shoehorned in a tired old dank meme with a "what are those?" I wanted to leave right there, I'm not gonna lie. In fact, even a few people in the audience groaned when they shoehorned in a "what are those?" as a front row center stage joke in the movie. It was pathetic. But I really do like that this was a more serious Marvel movie. I just wish they really just didn't even bother with such bad jokes. I also think this movie has one of Marvel's best villains. Michael B. Jordan with Killmonger is a fantastic villain. A lot of viewers can really relate to him. He's very sympathetic, which is surprising because he has no problems just slaughtering a bunch of people, but still his cause is one that you can kind of rally behind. Even if you don't agree with his methods, you can still kind of support what he's going for, his ideals. The story here is also pretty good. I do feel like it's not as impactful on the universe as the other entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe until the end where Wakanda gets involved directly with the universe. That's about the biggest thing here. And it is a very big deal, but in terms of, the bad thing that's going on in the movie here, it kind of just boils down to, well, we have some good weapons. We're going to go ahead and give these weapons away. It's not really one of those things where like, shit, that's super fucking evil. Oh my god, we got to put the kibosh on that right away. But it's still a good story. Just to me, it's not one that really carries a lot of weight until the end with the Wakanda entering the world, basically. Another big complaint I have is the action falls into the same standard shit as a lot of standard action movies. It's taken levels of jump cut, stirring action. You can't tell who's getting hit or what's hitting them. For all you know, they're fighting a fucking phantom. You can't really make out the action at a lot of points in here, which is a shame because Marvel's been doing a pretty decent job recently of not making it just look like two action figures colliding in a washing machine like most action movies do these days. But I really just don't have a whole lot of complaints about this movie, so let's pop this shit into the moist meter. I'm giving this an 85%. Just another really strong Marvel movie here. I just don't have a whole lot to say about it without giving away any spoilers, so overall, just another good Marvel movie. That's it. See ya. Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today I'll be analyzing the wetness found in the new Avengers movie, Infinity War. This is the third Avengers movie, the second being Age of Ultron, which was a huge stinky diaper of a movie. Just a big old shit stain. If your wife had invited Age of Ultron over when you were at work and she had sex with the movie Age of Ultron, you would forget that your wife ever cheated on you. That movie is so fucking forgettable, it's disgusting. It's a really not good movie, and I had very low expectations for this one, and I'm really happy to say I was extremely surprised with this. It is extremely good. The best superhero movie I've seen, easily. Now, the plot's pretty simple. After a lot of failed attempts from Thanos to get the Infinity Stones, he decides to come in person, raw, no rubber, nuts to butts, to get the Infinity Stones himself, and he is one hell of a big bad. I love that they didn't just make him this comically evil character that no one gives a fuck about, because not no one gives a fuck about, but no one can sympathize with, no one can, rationalize what they're doing. They really fleshed him out and humanized him with motives that some people might even say were just and might even support what Thanos was attempting to do. And I really liked that. It was a villain that you could really feel for and even at times root for. A very human villain, but still a villain and a real fucking badass. This is how you do a big bad in a movie. Fantastic, absolutely spectacular villain. I really, really enjoyed them. I really enjoyed him a lot. But let's get to the things that I didn't enjoy about this movie. I hated what they did with the Hulk. It was just so yucky what they did with the Hulk. They made the Hulk the biggest pussy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I thought maybe at the end it'd be redemption for the Hulk and he'd come out and have his big shining moment and was a super badass, but that didn't happen. They just made the Hulk laughable and just really upsetting. Kind of a spit in the face to Hulk fans, in my opinion, because there was no reason for it. They didn't justify why the Hulk is all of a sudden afraid of his own shadow. They didn't justify why the Hulk is just not anything cool anymore. There's no reason for him to be so pathetic. It'd be better if they had Peter from the new Deadpool movie trailer, who has no superpowers but still skydives. He would have done more in this movie than the Hulk does. Fucking sad, honestly, because the Hulk's one of the best characters. Another thing I really didn't like is the heroes never really outplay their opponents or outstrength them or really beat them. All the big bad guys they kill, like the lieutenants, the captains and stuff of the Thanos' army, they kill them by stabbing them in the back or ambushing them from behind. They just get them when they're not expecting it. They catch them with their pants down. And that's not really heroic or really cool to watch. It's like, oh, well, you just kind of fucking cheated there. Even 1v1s on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on Rust had more integrity to them. This is just kind of a letdown when they kill one of the bad guys or something like that. There's also a lot of pacing issues with the movie because there's so many characters each doing their own little separate storyline to tie back into getting at Thanos. So there's a lot of pacing issues here. Not a huge complaint, but it is a complaint nonetheless because that is an issue. There's also a lot of really silly plot moments that just make no sense and are really stupid, but it's a superhero movie. You can expect that kind of shit to happen. Now, what this movie does right is everything else. The humor in this movie is very reminiscent of Thor Ragnarok, which is really good. So the humor was on point for the most part, say for a few lackluster, stinky ones they tossed in there. But overall, humor was great. The visuals, per usual with a Marvel movie, spectacular, really good. The fighting scenes were really interesting because it have the reality bending stuff with Doctor Strange and also the Infinity Stones being tossed in there. So it wasn't just, slap fighting or like jerking off each other until someone comes and that's the end of the fight or anything. There was a whole lot of different new ways of fighting because there's the Infinity Stones at play, there's magic at play, and all the heroes using all their powers and shit. Really, really cool to watch a lot of the fights unfold. At least up until the end of the fight when one of the other heroes runs up behind the enemy and ties their shoelaces together to end it. Another great thing about this movie is the ending. Best ending in a superhero movie I've seen. I respect the shit out of what they did there. They actually pulled the trigger on some really important character deaths. Don't know if they're going to stay dead because there's going to be the sequel to this movie coming out next year, obviously, but as it stands, I'm really satisfied with what they did at the end. They committed to a sad, unhappy ending, which is very uncharacteristic of modern superhero movies. I know DC kind of takes cum shots in the dark to try and make their movies very grim and sad, but they're usually not. They're just laughably bad for the most part. But this one actually did have a very, sad ending. And I'd like to shout out Tom Holland's acting because that dude is killing it. If you're watching this, Tom Holland, come on the podcast. I want to tell you right to your face that you're a fucking great actor. Best Spider-Man. I used to believe that Tobey Maguire was the best Spider-Man until this movie. Tom Holland, you sold me, man. You're the best Spider-Man. You're the real Spidey. I really can't gush enough about this movie because it really does everything a superhero movie should do, and it does it really well. Save for a few pretty big issues with pacing and other things I've mentioned, but it's still a complete package that I think anyone who's followed Marvel movies will really enjoy and really like the payoff. I don't think you'll like what they've done with the Hulk and to an extent Star-Lord, but everything else is right on point and all the characters really shine. Now let's go ahead and plug this shit into the moist meter. I'm going to give this an 88%. That's a bit of an arbitrary number, but I want to let it be clear that it's the highest superhero movie score I've tossed out because I think this is the best superhero movie I've seen, but I don't think it's quite like a 90% moist meter movie. I think it's just below that because it does have quite a few issues, but it is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, and I am beyond shocked at how great it is. And I don't think I've looked forward to a movie in a long time like I have right now for Infinity War Part 2 or whatever the fuck they're going to call it. I'm really, really fucking excited to see how this wraps up. So yeah, that's it. So yeah. Welcome to the Quantum Moist Meter. Today we're going to quantumly analyze the quantum moisture found within the new Ant-Man movie. Why am I saying quantum so much? Well, it's because this movie says the word quantum so many fucking times. It reminds me of that episode of SpongeBob and Rock Bottom where it's can't understand your accent, But in this movie, instead of doing it says the word quantum. It is everywhere in this movie, and it will make you forget that quantum is a real word by the end of it. This is absolutely the weakest MCU movie in my opinion, but that being said, it's not a bad movie. There's a lot about this movie that's just very stinky, but overall it's an alright movie. So let's just go ahead and start with the story, because that's the worst part. The story is just so fucking lazy and haphazardly tossed together. It's almost insulting in its blatant laziness. It's almost like they're spitting on your intelligence. I'm not going to try and spoil anything too major. If I do spoil something, it's going to be very minor, so don't jerk yourself off too feverishly in the comments about how I spoiled that Scott Lang's hair is a little longer in this movie than in the last one. The story is Scott Lang's under house arrest for events of previous movies, but he needs to hop back in the saddle because Hank and Hope need him. So he's got to rock and roll, go big, go small, blast balls because he's got another huge mission. And that mission is they're going to get the mom back. I hope that's not a spoiler because that's revealed within the first couple of minutes of the movie. That's the whole purpose. So they want to get her out of the quantum realm. How do they explain how she survived 30 years in the quantum realm with no food and no water and really no way of being able to survive? Well, their explanation was very thought-provoking, scientific, and thorough. The explanation was, well, things move differently down there. Thank you. Now it all makes sense. That about covers it. And that's pretty much the whole tone of the rest of the movie's story. they just throw this shit at you and expect you to just take it at face value and not think much on it. And I guess that's not such a bad thing. It's a superhero movie. But this one is so much worse in terms of its story because this whole movie's plot could have been avoided within the first 30 minutes of the movie. In 30 minutes, the movie could have been done, kaput, everyone happy. The main villain of this movie is a character named Ghost. She can phase through shit. And she wants the technology that Hank and Hope are using to get their mom back because she needs it. And had Hank, Hope, and Scott communicated with Ghost what they wanted to do, how they were going to do it, Ghost would have been on their side. And they could have all worked together and been this super team and got everything solved. And everyone would have been fine, all parties happy. There was no reason that Ghost should have even been a villain had they just talked to her or had she talked to them and communicated. The hero's goals and the villain's goals were exactly the fucking same except for one small detail in the villain's goals that really you could have talked her out of or convinced her to just hold off on a little bit. It'd be as if you were working on a take-home quiz in school with your friend and you both got the same answer, but your friend didn't show all the work you showed. It'd be like you then going out of your way to slap your friend and never talk to him again because of that, and you just mortal enemies. It's so fucking dumb. It could have been avoided. It should have. It's just such a shit plot. And aside from that, there's so many other holes in this plot. It's embarrassing. It really is. But you would think with them not putting too much of a focus on the plot, they'd make up for it with cool scenes and action and a lot of cool shit happening on screen, but they don't. There's almost no action in this movie until the very end, and even that's pretty underwhelming. You get a couple scenes of action sprinkled here and there, little tinkles of bits of action here. But the action you do get here isn't very interesting. Every fight just kind of boils down to punch, shrink, kick, shrink, punch, punch, ouch, I'm hurt. That's the end of the fight. It's very not impressive. It's like a fucking N64 game with limited animation, so they did the best they could with what they had. It's basically fucking Rock'em Sock'em Robots with the occasional shrinking. They just never really use the shit that makes them superheroes in the first place. They use it occasionally, but not very much and not in interesting ways at all. This movie is carried heavily by great comedy writing and great character dialogue. And that's good that it's so good in that department because that's the majority of this movie. This movie is mainly just characters tossing pseudoscience-y terms at one another as if every character is just reading some type of sci-fi Tumblr blog post with science terms to sound smart at a bar to impress women. Tip your fedora at the end, sirs, for m'ladies. But when it's not desperately trying to make sense of a plot and it's just tossing good jokes at you and good character dialogue, it's an alright movie, it's fine. But it's just not a good superhero movie because it doesn't have anything that makes it a superhero movie. It has okay visuals when they go to the quantum realm, that's kind of cool, but that lasts all of 5 minutes, and that's it. It's just not a good MCU movie. It's an alright movie because it's carried so heavily by good comedy writing, but past that, there's just nothing of value here, except good acting, but it's a Marvel movie, you're going to get good acting. Let's go ahead and plug this shit into the moist meter. I'm giving Ant-Man and the Wasp a 55%. It's an average movie, it's okay. There were some jokes that I had a little giggle at and smiled at. And then there was times where I was sinking into my seat because what I was looking at was just embarrassing, or what I was hearing was just nonsensically embarrassing to listen to. It seems like this movie was such an afterthought in the MCU. Like they'd already written all of the movies and they'd already written Infinity War, but then one brave intern accidentally spoke a little too loudly in a hushed whisper, "Yeah, but what about Ant-Man?" And everyone threw their hands up in the air, "Fuck! We have Ant-Man, don't we? We gotta do something with him. Alright, let's just go ahead and fucking ham-fist him into the Infinity War plot," so we kind of explain that, and we'll just dedicate a movie to him with like a $50 budget, I guess. We have good writers here, right? Let's write some good shit, and then we'll give you a little bit for action, but let's not use too much of that. Let's pull a plot out of our ass. Let's do it, boys. We gotta make it happen, quick. This seems like this movie had no real purpose to exist. This movie seems very trivial. There's almost nothing that happens in this movie that feels like it has any impact on the MCU, except for the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene was very well done, and I really liked the post-credit scene, but overall this movie just seems pointless and useless, trivial. It seems like just, it's so unrelated to everything and just not anything important. And it really feels like no one really cared about it. It's a shame because the first Ant-Man was really good, and this one's it's pretty stinky in a lot of ways. But like I said, it's okay. It's all right.
Hey,
There's a lot of controversy surrounding Captain Marvel. I don't give a shit about any of it. We're not going to talk about it or touch on it. We're just going to look at the movie and see if it was a good fucking movie or not. So, the movie's main character is Captain Marvel, as you would expect from the title of the film, Captain Marvel. She's not a very good character, unfortunately. I don't think she's bad, and I even think Brie Larson does a great job with the character, but it seems like she doesn't really have a personality of her own. There's nothing memorable about her as a character. Her powers are pretty fucking cool, and I think they did a great job of showing how strong the character is physically from a powers perspective, at least at the end of the movie. Up until then, it was very lackluster with its action and showing Captain Marvel doing shit. And the action in this movie is my biggest complaint. It was some of the worst action in any Marvel movie I've seen, rivaling even Ant-Man and the Wasp in terms of its lazy, uninteresting action. I'd rather watch two fucking action figures colliding than half the shit on the screen, because at least it wouldn't be as nauseating watching action figures collide. In this movie, I was goddamn sick during some of the fight scenes. The shaky cam was unbearable. It seemed like every fucking camera operator was undergoing a seizure while filming every action scene. It was bad. I absolutely despised the action scenes, and they weren't even good from a choreography perspective. They weren't even flashy. They were just bad and an eyesore, honestly. And that's a shame when it's a superhero movie where the action is always what it leads up to. You have a fucking superhero that's about to super fist some assholes with their power, and in here you didn't look forward to that. This movie's at its best when it's not giving you action and it's giving you a little buddy cop movie between Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury, and Captain Marvel, Brie Larson. I think the chemistry between those two is great, even though it's really just Sam carrying the conversations. But even still, it's fun to watch them banter back and forth. There's a cool cat that comes into play that I thought was a good character. I thought the cat was just going to be a gimmicky bullshit thing, but it turned out it was a character that I liked and I thought was used well. From a story perspective, it's as cliche as it gets. This is the most cliche superhero movie I think I've ever seen in my life. This is like some mid-90s Saturday morning cartoon level of cheese. And not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but everything this movie does has been done before and done much better by other superhero movies. I think Wonder Woman is a stronger character than Captain Marvel. I think they're very similar in terms of how they were portrayed in their movies, but Wonder Woman was significantly more interesting, significantly better of a character than Captain Marvel. I also don't like the gimmick of the main character suffering from amnesia, not knowing her past, so then you slowly piece it together as to how they got there. I don't like that. Just start with all the knowledge out there and then give us some fun. I don't like where the character's drastically weakened and we have to go a whole movie getting back to where they were at the very start or figuring out how they got there. I don't like that shit. That's a pet peeve. I don't think they do amnesia poorly in here. It's not well done, but I don't think it's bad. It's just very generic. They very slowly piece the puzzle pieces together, and oh, what do you know? The most expected outcome is what you're left with. The story is incredibly predictable. The villain's incredibly predictable. Honestly, there's nothing in this movie from like a narrative perspective that's going to capture anyone's interest. Now, this is not to say that it's bad, because it's not. It's just so average, expected, predictable, safe. It's forgettable. It's unfortunately very, very forgettable, where you don't regret seeing it, because there are some good moments in this movie. I definitely think there are some good moments, for sure. None of them involving fights, because all of those suck ass. But towards the end of the movie, there's some cool shit that goes on, and I think some of the characters are strong, especially Samuel L. Jackson's character, and also there's a Skrull character in here that I think is very well fleshed out and developed. I just think this whole movie was super, super formulaic. I know Marvel has a formula that we've all come to expect, but they always put a nice little spin on it, whether it's the visuals, whether it's the humor, whether it's a twist in the story, something. This has none of that. There is none of that here. This is just as if a fucking Google AI experiment was tasked to make the most by-the-numbers superhero movie it could. This would be the result. And that's unfortunate to say, because I think Captain Marvel is a really cool character conceptually, and I do like the character. I just don't think the character really shines in this movie at all. Maybe in Avengers Endgame she will, but here it's just in a super forgettable movie that I don't think anyone's going to remember going into Endgame. They'll have to go back, rewatch this, and figure out who the fuck Captain Marvel is and how she got there. Yeah, I mean, that's about all I have to say about that. I mean, even the sound. I was expecting, like, perhaps a good score, even. I'd settle for, like, a better soundtrack than other Marvel movies, but you didn't get that. Everything here is predictably Marvel, but below Marvel standards, honestly. It doesn't quite reach the good Marvel movies. It's, like, right smack dab in the middle Marvel movies. This is, like, early Marvel movies. This would be, like, in the fucking early phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This would be smack dab in there. And that's unfortunate considering this was supposed to be a heavy hitter and setting up this crazy powerful character. So it's a bit of a letdown that the movie to showcase all that was so forgettable. Let's plug this shit into the moist meter. I'm giving Captain Marvel a 65%. Again, to reiterate, it's not a bad movie. It is extremely predictable with some good moments, but the action is never one of those good moments. I can't stress that enough. I really despised when anything was fucking happening on screen that could be even misconstrued as action. It was so poorly done. I don't know what kind of fucking filming techniques they learned in school, but that school needs to just be abolished. Get it out of here. That school is a goddamn crime against eyes if they're teaching their students to film movie action scenes like this one here. It's bad. I really didn't like the action. That's it. See ya. 50 years from now, your grandchildren will be asking you if you saw Avengers Endgame in theaters, and the answer that you'll give them is most likely yes, because everyone, their grandmother, I'm sure people are even bringing corpses to the movie, everyone is seeing this fucking movie. And for good reason. It's 11 years in the making. This is the final chapter to 11 years of incredible innovation. I don't care about your opinion on superhero movies. They are nothing if not innovative. They are fucking impressive, if nothing else. What they've done, what the MCU has done, has never been done before, and it was done extremely, extremely well. I absolutely loved Infinity War. I'm not a huge superhero fan. I don't, count the days till the next superhero movie drops or anything. I don't have posters or body pillows, of superheroes or anything. But I do appreciate them when I see them. They're always pretty decently enjoyable. And Infinity War blew me away. I was extremely excited to see Endgame. And I've got to be honest, it's not as good as Infinity War. It is still a good movie with a satisfying conclusion, but I have to be upfront and tell you, it is not as good as Infinity War. It didn't reach that bar that Infinity War set. And I don't think it ever even had a chance, because Infinity War, they wrote themselves into the corner of being beaten and take away a lot of the Avengers. So you're left with just, a few of them, a very important few, mind you. And then you have to talk about the despair. So they spend the first hour or so of the movie in pure despair. Here's 5 years after the Thanos snap and everyone's been, wiped out into another dimension where there's no ejaculation or dreams or anything. They're all just gone. And now you have to see 5 years of the damage it's done to the Avengers and people in general, and it humanizes the entire crew. And it is enjoyable to see that. They use humor throughout some of those parts, and the humor lands as it normally does in MCU movies. And you also get this sense of dread, and you see the effect that it's had on them, and I appreciate that. However, that tone goes on for far too long. I'd say the first hour and a half, maybe even up to 2 hours of this movie, is just pretty uninteresting and a bit of a letdown. Their solution to the problem, I can't spoil anything, though I would like to because this is where most of my complaints are. The solution to the problem is a fun one. However, it's way past its welcome in the movie. It goes on far too long with far too little happening. And then at the end you get a very satisfying climactic battle, as you would expect. And that's very chaotic, a lot of fun. There's a lot of really cool badass moments, fucking nuts being blasted by laser beams and fat fucking meaty hands being exchanged, broken bones, bruised faces. It's fun. I'm not a huge fan of huge battle things because I think it gets a little too cluttered and a little too clunky looking, and it just kind of all over the place and makes my eyes want to shit. But in this movie, it's done very well. I enjoyed the last hour-ish, maybe a little less. The last 45 I thought was absolutely spectacular. But everything up to then was just very slow. And I don't want to use the word boring, but it kind of was boring because it just felt, without spoiling anything, it just felt like you were on a carnival ride, and that's it. It felt like you were watching someone's video giving a tribute to all these characters with a lot of fan service and stuff. And I don't use fan service in a negative way because I don't think it's a bad thing. But it just was so much. It seemed like the first 2 hours was just giving you like a brief overview of everything that 11 years has covered in a nutshell. And I found that, while it was cute to, go through some of these things, I just found that to be very underwhelming. And speaking of underwhelming, Thanos in this movie is very underwhelming. After being this incredible landmark and making a good villain of Infinity War, he comes into this movie and he kind of sucks some ass. Like the first half of it, he's just like this emo sulking teen. Yeah, I did my destiny. I'm totally fine with whatever. Let the darkness come. Ugh. I thought he'd start fucking reading poetry out of his book that he has Pierce the Veil lyrics etched into. It was depressing to see him utilized this way. He wasn't the same incredible villain from the last movie. Towards the end, he picks up and he's a little bit better, but even then, he's not like this imposing, well-rounded character. And I guess since this movie's not supposed to be a self-contained movie, this is a movie you're supposed to go in having seen Infinity War and hopefully having been on this 11-year ride with them. So I can understand them not making him again like a fully fleshed out great character. But to have him come in here and kind of be like a shell of his former self, in my opinion, it was just kind of underwhelming. He was great in the final climactic fights and shit, but otherwise he just didn't really have the same power or the same, he didn't command the scenes the way he did in Infinity War, which was a letdown. The movie is not bad by any stretch of imagination. I'm just pointing out the things that I found to be underwhelming for a conclusion of this magnitude. I think it was an absolutely great movie. I did enjoy it. I wouldn't say I was let down. I just have to say it didn't live up to what you would hope and expect after seeing Infinity War. All the characters, there was a lot of development in this movie with the characters, and I really appreciated that. All of the characters got so much more depth to them throughout, and it turned it from more of like superheroes doing superhero ass-pounding shit to superheroes being broken people for a lot of it and trying to bounce back after suffering a hard loss. It was very touching, but again, it does overstay its welcome in that area. I really enjoyed the conclusion. I think it wraps it all up nicely. I'd say 11 years of hard work with a nice payoff at the end here, but I would have hoped and expected a little more. Plugging this shit into the moist meter, I'm giving Avengers Endgame an 80%. A movie that I'm sure all of you are going to see anyway, and you absolutely should see because it is good, it is enjoyable, but there are things that I think it didn't do all that well, or things it didn't do enough, things it did too much. It didn't hit all of the great notes that Infinity War did, and that's alright. That's not that big of a deal. Fucking liked it, and that's it. Welcome to the Moist Meter. Today we're taking a look at Spider-Man Far From Home. It's another superhero movie, which means another couple thousand Redditors with their pretentious fart-smelling tendencies saying superhero fatigue is setting in, I swear to God, this time. Like fucking doomsday preppers holding up signs on the street. Superhero fatigue, it's coming! The end is nigh! But as long as the movies still get made as good as they are, it's probably not going to set in for quite a while. The only really bad superhero movie I can think of off the top of my head from the Marvel Universe is Ant-Man and the Wasp. That one gargled some filthy butthole, but aside from that, Marvel movies are just so goddamn well done, and Spider-Man Far From Home is no exception. It is extraordinary. I really liked it. In fact, it's probably one of my favorite ones, to be honest with you. I think the villain in this movie is second only to Thanos in the superhero villain world. I fucking love the villain, and it's not because he had like a relatable goal or goals that you really sympathized with or a character you really even cared about, but he was just so fucking cool, and Jake Gyllenhaal was so good as the character. I loved it. It was just really amazing. The visuals they were able to accompany with his character, the way they executed a lot of the scenes involving the character, everything about him was amazing, and the ending to this movie is extraordinary. It got me so goddamn excited. I can't talk about it because it is a spoiler, but the ending of this movie had me and the whole goddamn theater excited. And that doesn't really happen. I like superhero movies. I think they're fun, but I never get like all giddy, dick in hand, ready to ejaculate. But when the movie ends and you see, you sit through a little bit of the credits, you're rewarded with something fucking great that I think most people that are familiar with superheroes and shit can really appreciate, and I really just love the way they concluded it. The whole movie, though, was really good. The comedy lands per usual with most Marvel movies. It's really well executed in the comedy department. It tells a cute little story as well, Peter Parker, Tom Holland, he's just fucking great as Spider-Man. I really enjoy him. Really, there's just no bad characters. There's really no bad moments in the movie. The only complaints I have are nitpicky ones about the story, because the story's, it's kind of silly. Like, a lot of the decisions from the characters don't make sense. A lot of the scenes don't make sense. The story doesn't flow all that well because a lot of it just doesn't make sense. You have to suspend your disbelief. You have this, the whole thing is about a field trip stretched over an adventure where a lot of bad shit's happening, and yet for some reason the adventure still continues despite if it being in the real world. You know, you fucking an entire city getting destroyed. Travel would probably be shut down, and since it's a bunch of kids on a field trip, the parents would probably want the kids home. You know, you just had a goddamn demon destroy a city, a literal act of God in manifestation of destruction destroy a city. Your parents are probably going to want you to call the vacation short, but yet it still continues over the course of a bunch of different locations. A lot of the decisions from the characters, again, that I can't touch on don't really make sense to me. There's this like level of trust that was never established as to why some of these characters are so trusting of one another. It's hard to explain without getting into spoilers, and I do try and avoid them. But that's the biggest complaint I'd have, is just that the story is kind of nonsensical, and a lot of it's set up for jokes, I imagine, and because it kind of pokes fun at how ridiculous it is. There's a scene where Peter Parker gets on a train, and all of a sudden he's like 3,000 miles away from where he started in like the blink of an eye, and they use that for a conduit for jokes, and I guess that works too, but it's just kind of silly from a narrative perspective. And the only other issue I have with the movie is I really think Spider-Man was kind of lame in like the first 2 or 3 fights. He didn't really do anything. He kind of just got his ass cheeks smacked on by the enemies. He didn't really impress me, and he has been impressive. Like, Spider-Man is a really, really fun character to watch in the action scenes in all the previous movies, and it was really underwhelming in the beginning. He just kind of, you know, tossed a pebble. He'd throw a little road sign at the monster. I mean, that's kind of underwhelming, you know what I mean? But at the end of the movie, he really pops the fuck off. The last fight scene with the main villain is really, really fun to watch. I enjoyed that a lot. Really, everything about the last 30 minutes of the movie, I was just giddy about. I really, really liked it a lot. The movie's definitely worth seeing. I think it's very fucking good. Plugging this shit into the moist meter, I'm giving Spider-Man Far From Home a nice 90%. I really like it. I know a lot of you kind of scoff at superhero movies, but they're just really well made. They're really well done. Comedy works in all of them. The action works in all of them. They have good stories. They keep setting themselves up for a really interesting story narrative perspective. It's hard to not like them. You can pretend you don't, but when you see one, it's always enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. That's about it. See ya.